To really make this stick, I have to give a little bit of backstory. In 2010, I was arrested for an OWI. My BAC was .089, while the legal limit is .08. I had passed all my road sobriety tests, and I hadn't been drinking for a while. I have an abscessed tooth which stores substances, and so I blew over. I was sentenced to a year of probation, which included a year of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're unfamiliar with the AA program, it's a 12-step recovery program that is very, very religiously based. I brought up to my probation officer that it was unconstitutional to force me into religious treatment, and I demanded a secular treatment option, and she gave me the option of spending the entire year in jail rather than just going to AA. So I was forced into the decision between either attending the religious indoctrination attempts or giving up my freedoms and giving up my school and going to jail. So I chose to suffer through AA, as almost anyone would in that situation. The one thing I'm really, really glad about with that is that it's given me the passion and the inspiration to speak against that group. I know that seems weird for people who support getting alcoholics recovery, supporting and ending alcoholism, and giving people a new hope. The problem that I have is the methods in which they do that. If you've never attended an AA meeting, I suggest you do. They always start off with, whenever you're a newcomer, is to remind you, to tell you to keep an open mind, to be open. They reinforce that idea of being open-minded throughout the entire process. The thing is, it's one of the most closed-minded groups I've ever seen. They want you to keep an open mind to their brainwashing and to their indoctrination, but not to alternative means. And they claim that it's spiritual, not religious, it's not any denomination except for the fact that they have 2 Christian prayers said at every single meeting I've ever attended, and they reiterate the point over and over and over again that you need faith, you need faith, you need faith, you need faith. Just to really hit this one home a little bit, I thought I'd read part of a chapter that's in the Alcoholics Anonymous book. The chapter is We Agnostics, and point out exactly the issues that are there. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or, if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. That right there is laying the groundworks for the false dichotomy that they present, that you either need a spiritual life, you need God, or you're going to drink yourself to death, which they actually do continue to state. Let's continue reading. To one who feels he is atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. That sentence is offensive to atheists, period. It's reducing our reasoning, our cognizant, down to just a feeling. Most atheists I know have spent a lot of time contemplating and have spent a lot of time in introspection until they reach that point. It takes a lot to get to the point where most atheists are. Let's just continue. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. Who says those are the only choices? That's what the book says. That is it. They force you into a false dichotomy of either drink yourself to death or choose to follow a spiritual path, which there are many other options than that. But it isn't so difficult. About half of our original fellowship were exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life, or else. Again, forcing that fire and brimstone false dichotomy of you need to follow this or you're going to destroy yourself, which is not a good basis to do to a vulnerable group. Perhaps it's going to be that way with you, but cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheist or agnostic, but our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. So basically they're saying, yeah, you think you're an atheist right now? Well, just stay in our brainwashing program and we'll show you. What it is it's brainwashing. And I know that some people will, stand by the affirmation that you don't have to adhere to every single thing. You can do the steps. Being an atheist, you can do that. If you've never attended an AA meeting or have never read the AA book, you probably don't know how their program works. Well, this is part of the book that is read at the beginning of every single meeting. I can usually say most of it without having to think. But this is how they claim that it works. And this actually lays down and shows how it's a religious program and how it's religious indoctrination. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. The honesty they're seeking and the honesty you need to live by is that there is a God. You can try to rework it almost any way, but that's the groundwork from what I've seen from meetings, that is the idea that they're presenting. And so then, let's continue. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. Right there showing that it's a religious program trying to reiterate the point that you can't do it on your own. You need God. You need God. Again, continue. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. Were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Once again, emphasis is on spirituality. Don't need to say it. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A. That we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B. That probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C. That God could and would if he were sought. Alcoholics Anonymous is religious indoctrination and religious brainwashing, and it's court-ordered. That's a giant violation of First Amendment rights of freedom of religion because it is a religious program. The fact of giving an ultimatum of choose your freedom or choose religion is just ridiculous. And the main problem that I have with the AA program is that it does this indoctrination and it does these false dichotomies and it does this false promises to a very vulnerable group of people. And I know that many people would say, well, what's the problem if they get help, if they recover? There is the problem. It's using an escapism. It's not addressing the issue. I mean, you still see many people in AA who've been in AA for a while, who relapse, who end up killing themselves, who end up still going back and slipping and drinking themselves to death. And those were people that adhered to the AA principles, and those were people that adhered to the steps. But they're also reduced to people who just didn't try hard enough. There are attempts of secular treatment groups, and there are attempts of secular recovery programs, but they're not as widely spread. This is a major problem within the American judicial system, that they would require and enforce religious treatments and religious indoctrination as a form of rehabilitation. It's a major violation of First Amendment rights, and the fact that it goes unchallenged, unquestioned, unacknowledged just shows that the Judeo-Christian influence on the nation is ever present. We really do not have the rights that we think we do. We really do not live in the type of free nation that we assume we do and that we present we do. The foundation of America was on a secular nation. It needs to be secular. We need to not have religious treatments as court-ordered, mandated rehabilitation. And we especially need to not try to indoctrinate a very sick community and have them give up on their own ability of being a human. If you haven't liked me on Facebook, the link is below. Make sure you check it out. I like to get to know what everyone would like to see and have discussed. I also have pictures of my modeling and pictures of my photography that you can check out. There's a whole bunch of extra content. Make sure you check that out and follow me on Twitter, and make sure that you subscribe.